we can't talk about. What was your first personal reaction to what you saw?
Okay, so my personal reaction, we're sitting in a theater. So they tell you, let me just give you a bit of the flow so you kind of get the state of the mind. So they have breakfast at a tent. It's like a meet and greet. You're meeting all the content creators. It's wonderful. That's how it starts. And then from there, they bring you into a theater where they sit you down, but they told people, like, we only want the content creators to sit in the chairs. Anybody that brought a +1 or something, you sit off to the side. A lot of the staff that worked on the expansion Vessel of Hatred, they were watching our reactions and all that jazz. So they sit you down, and then they explain to us what we're going to see. There's going to be a new class, and they wanted us to imagine summoning a god in Diablo, what that might be like. And then, the art team came through and they explained, like, this is how we wanted the combat to feel. And they're talking it up. Right? They're getting us, we're salivating. And then they hit us with the actual Spiritborn gameplay. And then they had the audio cranked, and it was just like, you could feel the bass going through you. And like Rob mentioned it, like he had goosebumps. Dude, I'm on the edge of my seat looking at, making sure I'm catching everything about this class. He's whipping around his glaive and stuff. And it looked really cool. Very monk-esque, right?
Yeah.
And so my reaction was, holy shit. Like, this is good for a lot of people. Like, people that loved Monk, you're going to love the Spiritborn. If you like that style.
I really loved Monk. That was one of my favorite classes.
You're going to main this then. You're going to main this class. Yeah. So that was my thing. It was like, holy shit. It wasn't a paladin. Like, I fucking love, pardon my language, I love the paladin. Okay, I love paladin. I love holy damage. I love the idea of heaven and hell, but I'm going to be this holy
sword
crusader.
and board.
Yeah, sword and board, or like a mace and a flail whipping around and smacking. Like, I love that part of Diablo gameplay, and so I'm not getting that. So I go like, shit. So like, then what do I get instead? And this is what I get instead. I'm like, that's kind of cool. I want to summon a god too, and so that was it. Yeah, I loved it, man. It looked great.
So you were enthralled immediately. Were there any hesitations or like concerns that you had immediately or anything?
No. So not at all. Not watching the class. Like Blizzard's legendary for their presentation. Like, you watch the cinematics. Yeah, it's like, I just want to try what you're showing me, right? And then they show you the class. It's like, that just looks sick. And then you have to play it. And we got to play it. And maybe I'm deviating a bit from our script here if we even have one. But so after watching that, I only got an hour and 45 minutes to play it. So when you asked about concerns, I have some concerns that I got within 2 hours, which might be like a bit of a red flag. But for me, I don't have enough time to fully play the class yet. And there's a lot of reasons, like, we should discuss why my score is lower than most people, I think, that I've talked to. But I'm not really concerned so much, just things that I don't have the answers to yet. And the class could just exceed my expectations. Currently, I've got some things I'd like to see built out in the class, but we'll see where that goes. Yeah.
Well, and not to mention, I would imagine that what we saw and what you guys saw was probably an iteration. They're trying to introduce it to us. They're trying to say, here it is. My guess is the devs are a month ahead of us, even from what we've seen, and so I have my concerns as well. I had those like questions, like, what is, certain abilities look like they might be more strong than others. And like, I was digging through the talent trees, and there was Touch of Death, which looked like it had like some of the highest multiplicative damage in the game, and I'm like, there's no way they're going to let that go live, right? So those are the kind of questions that come up for me, is like, is everybody going to get to that level, or are we talking about we're introducing a class that's already going to be pretty hype? Are we going to make it broken?
It's Blizzard, right? So the first class, I'll touch a couple of these. So the first thing is, it's a new class. They're going to make it strong so that it feels good when you bring it into the world. Because if it felt bad, imagine that would be terrible, right? So
yeah, nobody would want to play it.
Nobody wants to play it. Like, wow, nice hype for this class that feels underwhelming. Like, no, thank you. So I wouldn't be surprised if the values were overtuned slightly. And there's a few reasons why. First of all, let's talk about the Touch of Death comment. So Touch of Death is great and all, but you got to stand still and cast it. It's not an AoE as far as we know yet. It doesn't do like some kind of cone attack as far as we know yet. And let me speak on that as far as we know thing. Everybody that played the game so far got our hands on it. We've only been level 30. You're not allowed to get XP. You are capped at 30. So a Diablo 4 level 30 character and a Diablo 4 level 100 character with all your uniques and all of your legendary aspects, that's a totally different experience.
It's correct, yeah.
Right? And so the cool stuff that like people like Wadijo are doing, where he's got this spiraling razor wings ability with his hunter ultimate coming in and like resetting cooldown, that's already really sexy at level 30. But what can we do to like make that insane at level 100? Nobody knows yet, but it's interesting. So with regards to how the class is going to perform, I expect very, very well. Very well, because it has to. It's the new product, right? It's the shiny new toy. So
for sure, they got to sell it.
Got to sell it, and so it felt really good. It didn't feel overtuned at all. That might be surprising. It felt like a a very like it felt like monk mixed with like rogue speed. It's the fastest class in the game for sure, fastest class in the game, and it was exciting. But I can't really tell you, unfortunately, like anybody else, I can't really say how good it is compared to other classes at level 30 because we don't really look at things that way. But this is unfortunately the ceiling in the experience. So I would imagine that the Spiritborn at level 100 is going to be disgusting. Like I think it's going to be nuts. Yeah.
I think that, I think that that's part of the live service thing is you introduce a class, everybody gets a taste of it and they like it and they're excited about it. And then they bring everything back down to earth and level it out. I think the thing that intrigued me the most too, and maybe you can share more about this. I do my own builds and I'm sure that you spend tons of time building and like theory crafting every possible scenario. The idea of taking multiple different like gods and elements of those gods and like combining them into something that is nobody's done that. Like, okay, so everybody's hopping on to Jaguar this season. We take in 2 seasons from now, my mind's already turning that I'm going to go gorilla main with like a centipede background, and just like the diversity of the builds, they're setting themselves up for success with that because the more diversity that you can create, I think, the better people are going to continue to be interested in that,
I do know. And so let me speak on that because I had concerns. So this is something that maybe you didn't catch in a previous podcast. There's been a lot of Spiritborn content going around. So you're right to think that way. So I asked them, like, we had a maybe this wasn't disclosed to you, but I asked them a question after we got to play the class and we got the presentation of the class. They brought us into this room that the events team at Blizzard put on, and it's got like it felt like you're in a jungle, right? Maybe you saw that in like some video footage. All the content creators are sitting around in rows and rows and rows, and there's 3 people. You got the lore individual, you got the gameplay mechanics individual, and then you got basically the class designer. We're asking them all questions, and so the question I asked was, to a statement they made previously. They said that Spiritborn is in the game of Diablo 4 to fulfill a role that nothing that the other 5 classes can fulfill. And I said, wait a second, because the gorilla spirit feels like a barbarian. And then you have like the centipede that feels like a witch doctor, damage over time. And then you have like the eagle and the jaguar that are reminiscent of like some barbarian builds, but more so rogue builds, right? And so because the Spiritborn does all that, what makes it fill in the gap? Because I don't see where the gap is being filled in. And that was a tough question for them to answer. But the answer was the class is designed to be modular. So this is where you're speaking to. It's designed to be able to, at any point, switch its god prowess or like spirit prowess to be like, okay, I started off as a jaguar, but now I want to become an eagle. And you quickly press Shift C and you switch that up and away you go. And then your gear is going to be able to be affected by that choice, which is something no other class can do. And that's where the power is. And so I said, okay, like follow-up question. What happens if I choose double jaguar? Do I get punished because I didn't choose a lesser god option or lesser spirit option? They said, no. Well, you guys don't have access to this today, but we've already thought about it as a team. And if you decide to go like full on jaguar, we have uniques and legendary aspects that support that build. And we have uniques and legendary aspects that support a very diverse build. Like, let's say you wanted to do, gorilla ground stomp and you wanted to back that up with like sword, a move, and you wanted to back that up with jaguar ravage. Like, there is a build that and legendary aspects and uniques that will support that play. And that's what the class needs. But that's what I didn't get to feel. I did not get to feel that. So I'm left going like, I hope it's good. That sounds really good, right? Yeah.
Sounds good on paper. Let's see how well they execute it, right?
Exactly right.
And that is a great question, by the way, because it sort of becomes this thing where like, are we filling all the niches, or are we taking all of the great things about each of the classes that exist and putting it into something else, right? Like that, I think, is the core of what you were trying to ask there, is like, it sounds like we're getting, pieces of other classes. Are we going to end up with a place in this class where it's going to feel different than anything else?
Right. Yep. Yeah. And so there's going to be overlap because it's an ARPG. Like, people have to do a basic melee attack, but when you do that melee attack, if it feels like it's a martial arts attack, it feels Spiritborn, right? If it feels like I'm decapitating somebody with a quick hit, that's a rogue. If it feels like I walk up to you and put a mace through your character, that's barbaric. And so as long as they're doing that right, that's okay. I'm still waiting for the paladin though. I'll still be that guy. I'm still waiting to I'm still waiting for the paladin.
There's a lot of people that were really craving that, and we'll see. Maybe they'll do that with the second expansion.
I hope so. I mean, the sooner the better, right?
I've
got this kind of take, like, because the ARPG scene's got so much going on with like Path of Exile 2 coming out soon, Last Epoch making good revisions, Diablo's doing its thing. Like, if you have something, release it. Like, don't release it too early, because we've all felt what that feels like. But if you have something interesting, send it and just go
Yeah.
for it. Let that. We will give you the feedback, and together as a community, we can make it the best Diablo possible. And they want the same thing, by the way. After talking to them, they feel the same way. Yeah.
I will give them a lot of credit because I streamed. I was excited for Diablo 4 into the like early days of the beta and like early launch. I was one of those people that was like there was a lot of like bandwagoning that happened at the early days of Diablo 4 where it was like this game isn't going to make it, and I always felt like just give them time, right? Like Diablo is proven that even with Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 and Resurrected and all of these games that they come out with, they have demonstrated a track record of like listening to people to a large degree. And I will give them a lot of credit for that. They have listened to what people asked for, and season 4 was a real reflection on that. My hope is that they'll take and like build on that and make it even more of an open forum for people.
Yeah, and so you're not wrong. Like the track record, everything you said, I agree with. But I'm a Diablo partner, so maybe this is kind of refreshing to hear. Like, how much time do you need though? Because you got to
point.
Yeah, like I don't need to give you all the time in the world. I'll just go play something else that's better. And so
that is so true.
From like a product standpoint, you got to have your stuff together, man, because the industry's moving on. And if Diablo 4 doesn't keep up or set this new precedent of excellence, we're going to naturally migrate to that other thing. And so I'm going to be quite frank. Like I love playing Diablo games, but Path of Exile 2 looks so amazing. And so that's
really
going to be, that's going to be a very tricky puzzle for the team over at Blizzard, who I met, shook hands with, said hello to. They got to solve that puzzle because Path of Exile 2 is on its way. And I could tell you they're passionate. I think they have a good roadmap, even though I haven't seen it. It feels like they know what they're doing. So it should be okay.
And that competition is good for Diablo, right? Assuming that they rise to the challenge. Competition breeds excellence. So nothing wrong with trying to be better and learn and grow from it. So moving more broadly, what are some of the things that you're most excited about for the expansion? I know that we're getting season 5 is just around the corner, and we're getting some really cool, hopefully updated and interesting content for the hordes. And then it looks like we got like raids potentially coming.
Yeah.
A lot of like open questions, I guess, is where I am with the future of Diablo. How about you?
Well, I do think that the future of Diablo is in good hands because I talked to the people making it, and they, again, are passionate about it. So what am I looking forward to most? I like the way Diablo is now. I want it to be more group-centric. Like I want you and me to team up for a reason and want to hang out at night because you're doing one role, I'm doing the other, and together we play to make a good experience. Now, unfortunately, the odds are against me because 85% of the player base that plays D4 is a solo experience, which is crazy. But I think the reason that 85% is that way is because there's no social layer in Diablo 4. And so that produces that result, right? If there was a way for me and you to connect right now without you having to add me on BattleNet, join my team, and that whole frustrating situation, if that was much easier, 85% could be somewhere closer to 60, 62, maybe 55, and that's okay. However, that's not the world we're in. So I hope that in the expansion, what am I looking forward to, broadly speaking? A better social layer, a reason for you to be in clans, a more diverse skill set for every class. I want a bunch more uniques, a bunch more legendary aspects. I want you to be excited about every season that happens so that you're like, man, I feel like I missed out on season 6. Like, oh my God, that was awesome. Or like, I can't wait for season 7 because I finally get a chance to fight Mephisto plus X, right? Like I want to fight primevals. I want to slay demons. I want to look good doing it. The audio is there. I want that fast combat. I want it all. And I want it now. It's like, so I have to wait. And so in addition to all that, what do I want to see? I want some of that nostalgia. Like clearly I'm going on 40 this year. I played a lot of Diablo. I want to see Stygian dolls. I want shamans that I kill, popping shamans jumping off their shoulders, breathing fire. I want tricky fights. I want a lot of monster density. One thing that's not in Diablo 4 that I missed from Diablo 2 as an example is the light radius effect. In Diablo 2, you got this darkness around your character, right? And you don't really know what's around the corner because it's got that fog of war. Diablo 4 is a very open experience compared to that.
Yeah.
And Nuant 2 is, and I guess Kurast for a larger snapshot out, is it's a vibrant world compared to what we're used to. It's got a bit more vibrancy to a color, life happening in a jungle. And so I would like to see light radius just impacting Diablo 4 more than it does, and it doesn't. And that might sound like not a big deal, but when you play like an ARPG that's a gothic, demonic combat-centric game, not seeing things killing you off the screen is frustrating, but not seeing that butcher just in the darkness at the edge of that screen is exciting, because then you get that dopamine. And I want runes in the game. I want jewels back in the game. I want more than just gems. Dude, I have so many things that I want Diablo 4 to be from the previous Diablo experiences that's not in the game yet, that I'm hopeful that it gets there, and we'll see what the expansion brings to that, right?
Yeah, I think you can speak to this, I'm sure, on some level as well. One of the most requested things I get within my community across TikTok, because I co-stream on TikTok and Twitch, every day, hundreds of times, I get this, are they going to add a group finder? Is there a group finder in the game yet? Yeah. And that to me, like, those are some of the macro level decisions that they could make. And I don't know how difficult that would be to add to Diablo, but that would be like a macro level decision. But I also see some of the decisions that came with season 4, like, for example, there was a level of punitiveness to doing pits with a group. Yes. So only the person that opened the pit is going to get the full credit for those mats, right?
Yep.
And so, like, those micro level decisions on top of that's where the social layer is sort of missing, I think, in a way, because you're almost sort of punishing people for grouping up.
Let's speak to this. So in Diablo 4 today, when you and me play together, if I'm the party lead, I put in something called a rune shard. I get rune shards by running content, but specifically nightmare dungeons, okay? I complete a nightmare dungeon, I get some amount of rune shard currency. I go to this area in Karagar, which is the Artificer's Pit. I click on this object, and it explodes open, and for 3 rune shards, me and 3 other people in Diablo 4 can go run a pit together. When we complete that pit successfully, me, Barricade the party leader, I get 100% of the materials, and every other player in my party receives 50%. That's a problem, because that disincentivizes you from that's not good. You don't want to play with me to get 50% of the reward. And by the way, personally, I don't think that you should. So the first thing that I did when I caught wind of this is I'm a Diablo partner, like you mentioned. So I go to the Diablo Partnership Discord and I present this as a problem to the team. I say, hey guys, this is an MMO ARPG, but not really an MMO. It's more of an ARPG. And I don't think that we're grouping up the right way, because you shouldn't be punishing people for wanting to group up. If anything, that's the reward. It's easier to clear with more powerful adventures and sanctuary. So I brought that up directly. I hope there's a fix on the way. Fingers crossed. We all want the best game possible. The best game possible does not, unfortunately, punish you for playing with other people. That doesn't even make sense. The other thing you said is group finder. So I want to talk about that next. So how hard is it to get a group finder in the game? Apparently tremendously difficult, because they haven't done it yet. However, I've got community members that have taken time out of their own day, and they created a website called Squads. And Squads is a free-to-use website. They don't run ads. They don't get paid. I'm not paid to talk about it. But these guys wanted to create a solution to the problem. The problem is you cannot find people running Nightmare Dungeons, Hell Tides outside of the 11 people, plus you is 12 people in an instance. How do we solve that? So they made this site called Squads. And so I'm going to work with these guys to have a Twitch overlay that you can use for free, I can use for free. You just run it as an extension, and then while you're in anybody's community, you mouse over the stream and you'll see a UI that says join team for dungeons, join team for raids, join team for Duriel runs. And you click on it and automatically you join up in a queue. And you guys can all message each other, get your battle.net, and away you go, and you're done.
Free. That's amazing. Can you link that to me, by the way? Because I would love to use that.
Yeah, I absolutely will.
Yeah,
after
that'd
this.
be great.
For sure. Yep.
I didn't even know that existed, so that's good to know.
And many people don't. And I don't like. I don't want to force a product on anybody.
No.
You don't sign up for it. I should say as well, just really quick on this, it uses a process called OAuth 2.0, which is a secure web standard. And basically, you've already logged into battle.net. Your browser knows what your battle.net information is. We don't need to know what it is. So we use OAuth 2.0 to grab that battle.net tag only and expose that to anybody else so that we know what your number is. So we go, hey, man, what's up? And you're like, hey, dude, thanks, connect, friends. Great, let's go play. And that's all that we need from you is that number. But unfortunately, Blizzard doesn't have any APIs that make that easy to integrate with Twitch, but we've got passionate community members that are working on it, and I thank them for that effort. So there's something on the way from the community, but not officially from Blizzard. And
that's usually where it starts, right? Is if you have a group of people that are passionate enough about something, like, from a Blizzard standpoint, like, they only have so many resources, right? So resources are finite. They have to prioritize what they want to prioritize. So it is interesting and good to see that there are people that are willing to solve that problem. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of the, there are a lot of videos, and I think I've seen some of yours and some of Rizzer J's, a mutual friend of ours, have talked about things like maybe we're going to get to a new level cap. It
Yeah,
looks as though we've got some little teasers here and there that a level cap is coming, that there are Paragon boards changing. So I guess the question for me here would be, if the keys were handed to Barricade and you were
sure.
able to, at least at the like bigger, like global level,
Okay.
change the Paragon system and the talent system in Diablo 4, what would you do?
Ooh,
What would it look like?
wow, that's a big one. That's a
Yeah.
big one. You threw talents in too, you bastard.
Or if you just want to take one of those, that's fine too.
Okay, I'm gonna write this down so I don't go off too far. So talents, Paragon board. Let's discuss
Yeah.
Paragon board first. Okay, so Paragon board's really interesting, even though it doesn't seem like it. So at a base level, Paragon boards is connect the dots to make your character stronger. Eventually, so every Paragon board in the game today is 10 nodes to get to a glyph. So 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I access a glyph. I put this glyph in that I think makes my build better, and away I go. I get that glyph that's rare because magical ones don't work. They don't do anything. They should not be in the game, in my opinion.
They're almost just even placeholders, you know?
They're so
Yeah.
useless. Like,
Yeah.
there's okay. So, right, here we go. Here we go. So, like, the rare nodes are cool, and you get them to level 21 to reach their maximum potential in your build. Okay. That's nice. And then from there, you go ahead and you get maybe a couple of the rare nodes. Maybe you really like the Paragon board. You grab the legendary node, and then you're out off to the next board until you run out of points. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we make that interesting is maybe the first question, right? How do we make it more sexy so that somebody wants to use it? Well, what if the Paragon board, and this is just off the top, like I have many ideas and who knows where they come from, but what if the Paragon board allowed you to socket in an item that would give your character a potential set bonus to bring set bonuses back to Diablo 4? So instead of a glyph, it was a part of a glyph that you could socket in with a item that you wear, or maybe a talent that you choose when you socket in a glyph so that you get a partial set bonus. So what you want to do in your item adventure is find these glyphs or glyph fragments to create a potential rune word and empower your character from a set bonus, but you give up you'd have to give up something for that power, right? So maybe you don't, if you do that, you erode the legendary power from the board to make this legendary glyph set item power activate. I don't know. But I'd like to see the Paragon board be a little bit more diverse in its power structure for players' builds and stuff. Like, maybe you like to make a druid that's more support because you support a really powerful sorceress that you play with, or a necro. What if there was a way in the Paragon board that not only could you use glyphs, but you could use these glyph fragments to create a rune or set power to empower that choice the way you want? I think that's great. That would be a starting conversation. Or you could like empower the legendary ability from a somehow, I don't know, an item application to a glyph so that you could exploit the power of a glyph, a legendary power. As an example, like there's an enchantment master board in the sorceress, right? So you get increased elemental damage. Well, what if I wanted to like go all in on that? Like, what if it removed the cap, but I couldn't use the glyph on that board? Like, okay, so now I don't get the glyph power, but I can really like multiplicatively increase my character's magic for fire or lightning because I want to be a lightning master of the elements. Like, I think that'd be kind of cool.
You're making a choice, at least.
I'm making a choice.
Yeah.
And so in that choice, if I just, let's say this is real, right? In this choice, I do more offense. I have no more defensive option because the glyph is not there to give me damage reduction from close or damage reduction from things that are burning. It could not happen, right? And so I'd have to go on my board to either make that up somewhere else or go full in on glass cannon. And so that's not bad. At least there's some player friction there where it's like kiss and curse. Like, I'll give you the benefit with a little bit of like a backlash of no defense. So things like that, just as a brief example for the Paragon board, is very interesting to me. And there's a lot of room in the Paragon board to make the game interesting because of all the structures that we have outside of the talent tree, which we were about to discuss. That board is so impactful for a character's end game progression that if they decide to like 2.0 revitalize it like they did with loot, it could make all of Diablo 4 all that much better and all that much more dopamine when you find something that could impact that, in my opinion. So yeah,
no question about it.
Talent trees though. So talent trees, they're shallow. There's not a whole lot of depth. It's click 2 basic skills, go to your core skill, empower whatever you want there, then go down to your like defensive or whatever, right? And away you go. And so a lot of people, myself included, feel like it's limited. Well, what if it wasn't limited? What if sets, not even sets, what if uniques, because they're in the game, what if unique items were retuned so that they empower not only a skill, but access more skills for a whole new unique way of playing it? And I'll give you an example, like Whirlwind, right? What if you had gloves like Gores that give you like fire damage? What if that wasn't it? What if wearing Gores accessed 4 new skills in addition to Whirlwind. So while you wear Gore's Devastating Grips and you have a maximum level Whirlwind, these are the new skills that branch out because Gores empower you to play that way. Stuff like that is exciting. And stuff like that makes me want to find Gores so I can go ahead and try a different build. Just as an idea, like push the character skill experience, like the way I play, even further with something like that.
Yeah, and they did that to some degree with tempering. And I think, during
What
it
a
was
mess.
the
What a
dev
mess.
stream prior to the Spiritborn reveal, I think they mentioned that their like ideal build system would be, you don't want a whole class full of like uniques because you end up with like we're just getting the prettiest colors now. Like it makes the legendaries best meaningful. And I think that idea that you just mentioned about the talent trees, like unique ability or unique items unlocking new sets of talents would fit within that theory because you're saying, okay, if you want to give somebody 3 or 4 talents or 3 or 4 uniques as part of their build, then we're talking, okay, now Whirlwind shoots off and goes in a different direction, or it does something unique that you only get because you've equipped that. And it would fit within that like idea that you're not able to equip 17 different uniques.
Well, let me touch on this because I want to be devil's advocate to my own concept. So,
sure.
okay, Barricade, cool idea, but what do I do if I want to try your really cool Whirlwind build that gives me a new skill to like, I don't know, bring people in or like give other party members the ability to Whirlwind and channel through with ancient whatever. I can't play that unless I find the gloves, but I'm a casual player. I'm a player that plays less than 2 hours a day. Like I'll never get them. To that person, we need to work. I'm failing you as a community member. I need to get with you, get you in the runs, then give you an opportunity to play together. And so, yeah, not today you don't have it, but in the future, if you get involved in what we do, which is community-centered gameplay, that's an increased opportunity for you to hit it. So yeah, not easy by yourself, but with other people's help, we can help each other tremendously, and you can enjoy that class
and that
fantasy.
that touches on the like social fabric too, right? You're creating an incentive to play with other players and to bring other people up to your level and help and like lift everyone up,
Yep.
I did want to talk about the Paragon boards. I think I'm noticing like the more that I create content and the more that I do this, the build theory and the crafting and stuff, I have noticed that I am better at like identifying issues than solving them. And this is, I think, a great example of that with the Paragon boards is that what ends up happening so much of the time is that, so if you start with Diablo 4 at release, season 0, the Paragon boards were, if you want to be a lightning druid, here's the Paragon boards you use. If you want to be a fire sorcerer, here's the Paragon boards you use. And so it doesn't feel like there's a lot of choice there, right? So if you want to be the fire sorc, these are the fire sorc boards. And it creates a very sort of like cookie cutter path to where you want to be. There's some deviancy depending on if you want to use Incinerate or Magma Lords or whatever, right? But like, at the end of the day, I do think that the problem is that I think the problem is twofold. One, I think it is a little too cookie cutter. I think there's a little bit of a like, here's the path, and you go there. And then 2, I don't think all of those paths are equal, and it becomes hard to. What they end up doing between seasons, unfortunately, is like, okay, barbarians all the way up here, we got to bring them down, and then like sorcs all the way up here, we got to bring them down, and it just becomes this like whack-a-mole where you're trying to like fix the problem instead of diversity of choice. You're creating a whack-a-mole of broken. Whatever's the broken thing, we're going to fix that. So I wanted to kind of hear your reaction to that and like extend on that with your theory of the case.
Okay, so for some people, the Paragon board's already too confusing, right? They don't know where to go because when I give you every choice, you don't know what choice to make. It's choice paralysis. So in the cookie cutter experience, like you say, because you've got a lot of time invested in the system, for you, you're starting to see it, like you get it. It's not confusing anymore. You see basically this is all it is. And so now that you've hit that threshold, you want even more choice. So maybe you and me, our I guess familiarity with that system is
that's such a good point. Yeah.
More than others. So I think that you have to take it in tiers and stride, like an onion, right? You're pulling back the layers, right? So you and me, we like onions a lot. We got to the center a lot, but some people don't. So that's cool. There's still a problem there, right? Is it too cookie cutter? Not so much, because people still have to interface with it. Not everybody follows a YouTube channel or a Twitch channel or a gaming community. Like, if you do follow those things, just really quick, you're probably in the upper echelon of knowledge of what the game has to offer versus somebody who just likes Diablo. And so let's talk about somebody who likes Diablo. Paragon board's probably A-okay. They're probably not min-maxed at all. They're making what they think is good choices, and they're happy that they can clear a pit level 25 because they just want to play Diablo casually or at a not blaster hardcore experience. Perfect. Game exists for you. Now let's talk about the other guys. Okay, so we try to min-max every frickin' choice we can, and we want to make sure that, I lost 2% there, and that's okay because I can make up 12% over here. Let's talk about that problem. How do we make that cool? Well, I've already sort of disclosed some of the concepts I've had on that, but I do agree that it is a little bit too cookie cutter. And so how do you make it better? What if you just increase non-physical damage? Like, instead of saying this does X more cold or X more lightning, it's just non-physical. That way, everything that is not a physical attack is a magical attack, or is a Spiritborn spirit attack, or is like a necromancer non-physical damage application. So when you make things more generic, you can be more, there's a better power association there. And that's just a start. Like, I don't know if that's even the answer, but I think the Paragon boards, like I said, in their current implementation, they're too limiting. I agree, they're a little bit too cookie cutter. And I don't think the point that we want to reach is larger Paragon boards or even smaller ones, but more fun things to do within them. Like, what if you got even more player fantasy, like in all of your fire skills, if you always take the legendary node and you have a fire-based glyph in that board? Like, when you connect 1-to-1, that's the 2. That's the increased player power. That's why you'd want to do it. And if you decide not to, you're leaving a lot of choice on the table. Maybe that's a way to go. Alternatively, what if on this ice board, like a Frigid Fate board, you click the Frigid Fate node, and if you socket in a lightning glyph, you empower both elements by 30%. But if it's all ice, it's like 45%. So there's a reason why you want to be, Jack Frost instead of just a couple of I don't know. But that's something that Blizzard has to decide. And I know, talking to them, they've had conversations. There is internal conversations. These guys meet a lot. Like, they meet a lot. And they talk about a lot of stuff that you and I are probably discussing today. So they got to have a good plan for it. I just don't know what that is just yet.
And that's the developer dilemma, right? Is you can create a game for the like theory crafters and the Robs of the world, because as good and as experienced as I am, Rob is always going to have that next level, even above and beyond anything that I can imagine, right? And you're going to probably do the same.
Yeah, sure, but it's not our job to solve it. It's the game developer's job to solve it. It's our job to tell them we don't like something, and it's not their job to make us like, he doesn't like it, implement a change. It's their job to hear us, compare what we're saying to what the expectation of delivery is for them, for the game they want to make. And so if there's a union there and like they didn't know that we didn't really like it, I'm glad we spoke up, right?
That's where that honesty of conversation comes in. Like, at the end of the day, they get to develop the game the way they want to. Their job is just to have that avenue, right? To have that open avenue for feedback, and like they can hear everything that everybody's saying and say, we don't think that's true, and then make a different decision, But I give them a lot of credit for that. They have listened and they have taken feedback, and I'm glad to hear that. So
yeah, true.
So I want to let you ask a couple of questions, and I've asked a few, so it's up to you.
So mine are more like maybe more for you. So tell me about your history in the Diablo franchise. Tell me where your Diablo adventure started? Where did you get started?
It's actually interesting. So I had a cousin. I never had a PC growing up. I was a Nintendo kid. Duck Hunt. Some of those early games were some of the first games I ever got introduced to. And then I had a cousin, and I would go over to his house every now and then, and he was a little bit older. So he had games like Diablo and EverQuest and some of those like old classic MMOs. Yeah. And the very first time I loaded up Diablo, you hear Deckard Cain's voice, and then you're like, the very first time he was one of those people that would like let you experience the games on your own. And then that very first time you walk into the butcher's room and he just like absolutely annihilates you. And that was like my very first introduction. I think, as with everybody, to the horrors of this franchise, and then like the way in which I think that there is an element that has been a little bit missing, by the way, of like, you're actually a little bit scared of the butcher in Diablo 1, he is a little scary in Diablo 4 at times, but I think that there's something to be captured there. I didn't play Diablo 2 as much, and I did get a little bit of exposure to Diablo 2, the Resurrected Edition, and it was more of like my casual experience. But then moving into Diablo 3, that was where like my big passion for Diablo 3 or Diablo as a franchise
One
started.
second though, did you get to level 99 in Diablo 2, or what was your highest level character
I
in
don't
Diablo 2?
remember exactly. I don't think I've ever gotten to max level. And it was very, because I think that was also around the time that I had started college. And
Okay.
I was actually so I think we discussed what was Diablo 2 came out in like 2000-ish, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
And that was around the same time that World of Warcraft came out. And so I was actually, that's where my gaming world went a little bit. I can't remember exactly when World of Warcraft came out, but I was a hardcore like end game raid member for like Naxxramas and some of those like AQ40 raids and stuff like that. So Diablo 2 kind of like fell under the radar for me for years and years and years. I've since like revisited it at times and stuff like that. But never really got deep into the like room farming or anything like that. Diablo 3, I spent a lot of time playing that one socially, was very big into like trying to push my friends into it and stuff like that. And that's where like the social element of it came from. And then, you know, I think there was the big thing that obviously turned me away from Diablo 3 was the real life auction house. And I think that was a lot of people's issue with that game. Wow. is the implementation of that and the way in which people were sort of just getting gear. I was like, why am I spending all this time like hunting this gear down when I can just go buy it or somebody can just buy it?
Right.
So it kind of turned me off from the situation that Diablo Immortal came, and so I had high hopes for Diablo 4. A lot of the cinematics started to come out, and then with the beta, I kind of just like genuinely fell in love with the game and the story. In my opinion, and this may be controversial, I think some of the Diablo 4 cinematics and the story from Diablo 4 are some of the best in the franchise. So,
I mean, dude, Blizzard Entertainment cinematics slap. Like they just destroy. Yeah. Anytime you get the art team on a project, I mean, they kill it. Like every time you see a cinematic, you know you're in for something. You just don't know what it's going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. I get roasted on my stream, by the way, for even mentioning that. I don't know why, but people
mentioning what?
Like mentioning the story of Diablo 4 being good or the cinematics being good. People just, for whatever reason, have not agreed with that.
Who cares? Hey, who cares? You're allowed to have an opinion. Hey, guys, if you don't like his opinion, that's okay. You still have yours. Fair. He's allowed to have his, That's totally fine. Okay, so you mentioned a couple of things that I think is kind of hot, and I want to talk about it. So you were unfortunately let down in Diablo 3 because there was an auction house. Didn't love it. Okay. Yeah. So here we go. Would you support an auction house in Diablo 4 if it wasn't a real money auction house? And I'll kind of frame what I want the auction house to do. I want you, who's just gaming it up, you're going ahead, you're killing like Blood Maiden Farm and Helltide Bang. You get a triple greater affix sword that drops. You're like, damn, I know I could probably get a lot of gold for that. And with that lot of gold, I can go ahead and like completely finish my character, right? So you navigate back over to Kyovashad, Kmart, and you go visit this auction house. You walk in, you take your sword, you drag it in the inventory, and you sell it for 5 billion gold. You list it. And I'm like, man, I'm looking for a triple GA sword. All of a sudden I get a notification, sword's listed. I'm like, no way. So I teleport back to Kmart, and I go over there. I get off my mount, bang, I'm in the auction house. I'm like, what's that sword? I'm like, yep, that's the right price. Buy it. And then bang. And now it goes to my inventory. I lose the gold. You get the gold. It's no money, nothing like that. Would you support Auction House 2.0 in Diablo 4? What do you think?
I do. Yeah, I think I would support it in that way. Okay. Yeah, I would support that. And I actually think, so I believe it was Shroud. Maybe 8 months ago came out.
Shroudy. Yeah.
Yeah, he was saying that like the Diablo auction house was actually a little bit ahead of its time. And I agree and disagree. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of nuance probably to his opinion, but I think Diablo would be well served from a social standpoint, from a fabric of like community and stuff like that. I think that there's a lot of reasons to do an auction house.
Yes.
I personally would only support it. And I would even say that I would support a real life money auction house if it was purely cosmetic. Only if it was purely cosmetic. Meaning, like you could auction off rare cosmetics for a sword.
So if I got Lord Zir's crown, that's kind of rare,
correct,
and I don't need it again. I just start farming Lord Zir to sell crowns for money in life. Is that what you're saying?
Meaning there's a store now, right, within the game.
Yeah, there's
where
a
you
shop.
Can go
yeah.
And buy. Yeah. So I would support you go and you do a level 170 pit, and it drops this like ultra rare mount. I could turn around and sell that on the auction house for real money. I would support that. I think. Only if it was cosmetic. You don't, and that's fair.
No. Totally, but that's okay. That. It's cool that you want to, but I don't want that, and that's cool that you do. It's not a problem. We disagree.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. The next
So can
thing.
I ask
Oh,
what would be your concern with that?
I do not want my Diablo experience to become like an esport. I don't want it to become what's the most efficient way to make every build to farm amount to sell it. I want you to
That's
log
fair.
in a sanctuary to play it and enjoy it. And I want the money to be stopped, spent at when you bought the game, period. And then I want you to take all your dollars and go ahead and take the kids out for ice cream or something else. But I don't even want to open the door about money coming in the game. I don't at all.
That's totally fair.
And so if that's the hill I'm going to die on, I got to kill the conversation about cosmetics. And I'm kind of an ass because I did spend money on cosmetics too because I think it looks cool. But why I'm buying that is because the publisher's putting it out. Like I don't have to buy the cool looking lion armor. It's not going to help me do more damage, but I think I look pretty slick, so I wear the stuff, and that's okay. But I don't want money in the player base. I don't want it.
I do think that there's a really valid argument for the slippery slope of that, because if you look at everywhere in gaming right now, and I just talked about this on my last episode with my community manager, where like every game right now is trying to figure out a way to squeeze as much money as humanly possible out of everything that they can. And it is a valid argument. And I do think there's a point to be made that like once you open that door, who's to stop them from then selling the rarest items in the game and just call them cosmetics?
And so like they can do whatever they want to do. It's their project. But I'm gonna love the game when you sit down in your company and instead of trying to like nickel and dime every micro decision that a player makes, make those micro decisions fun to play your game. I want to make your game better because it's super fun to play. I don't want to make your game better because for only 3 cents more you can have this color rain on your horse. Like I don't care. I don't even want to promote that for you. Like, and not that I have to promote anything, by the way, as a Diablo partner. They like hearing our negative aspects just as much as our opinions of positive things. Like we get
and candidly, some of the Diablo partners are more vocal about the issues of the game than non-partners, and I'm glad to hear that, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, like I get this a lot. Like I've been called a shill. I don't get paid a cent for being a Diablo partner. I'm lucky to be a Diablo partner. The community that embraced me as a content creator elevated me to have enough confidence to approach these guys and go, hey, I think I'd be pretty good for the Diablo franchise. I want to make the game better. Bring me in that conversation. I only want this game to be the best it can be. And ever since I've been in there and I've been accepted in, I'm giving them the conversation of I don't like this. This is bad for your game. This is good for your game. Make a choice here. Make a choice here. And I haven't been castrated or looked down upon by anybody. And I shook hands with these guys in real life recently. So I can tell you, like, as people, we're all trying to make the game better, whether you believe it or not. I mean, that's just the way it is.
And for the record, just so that you know, for us non-Diablo partners, we also get called shills all the time. If you say anything, it doesn't matter. If you say anything positive about something, that you're a shill. So
And you made a comment here about being scared early in your Diablo adventures when you find the butcher's room, you get annihilated by him, right? He just took you down to Value Town, right? And so something I'm throwing out there is like in Diablo 3, I wasn't really scared of the Lord of Terror or the Queen of Terror. I don't really. So the Lord of Terror is Diablo, but Diablo 3 is a chick. Okay, cool. In Diablo 4, if Buddy comes back as a terrifying demon in the world, like what does a terrifying adventure feel like in a modern video game? Like is it jump scares? Is it eerie music? Like if your music volume is set down to 0 and you start to engage Diablo, regardless of your setting, it goes to 40. Like your music, like does he have that impact? I look at a game like I think it's Psycho Mantis in Metal Gear is a really cool boss. Like you can beat him, it's fine, but if you unplug your controller from whatever port it was in and plug in a new one, your actions are normal. But if you leave it plugged in, he messes with your controls. Like, is Diablo so terrifying that when you go to press your skills, random ones get hit because your character's kind of like, whoa, like scary guy, like, oh my God, he's so terrifying. Like even the demons don't want to be near him. He's brutal. And like he grabs your character, rips you in half, and not even death can save you. What does that mean? Like, does that mean that when I kill your character, when he hits you and kills you, the character's deleted? Like he's fucking terrifying to fight. Because if you mess up, it's game over. This is how I want Diablo to be. I want this next generation Diablo to be huge, muscular, scary unpredictable. Like he's brutal. I would love that boss. How does that sound to you?
So just a little bit of like this kind of like touches on my background a little bit. I am a former PsyD student and I'm a former therapist. So like I used to work in a prison and I used to work in a probation office, and I would sit across the table from some of the biggest monsters in the world, and
thank you for your service, by the way. Yeah.
What's that?
Thank you for your service, by the way. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Happy to, to be that person for people that needed it. And At the end of the day, the thing that's the most scary, it depends on the game. I think it depends on what you're trying to create. I think you really touched on something important earlier in this conversation, where you had that like spotlight, the light filter, where like everything wasn't revealed to you immediately. I think that is touching on something very important, because like the moment you walk into a dungeon, if you've seen that already, you know what you're getting into. Like what's around the corner. Everything seems the same. And the idea of like that mystery, that like sense of jump scares are a part of it, but it's also just the mystery of it.
It's the
And
fear
I
of the
think,
unknown, right? The
yeah.
fear of the unknown, right?
And Mephisto as a character provides a lot of opportunities for that, because he is the embrace, like he is the guy that's like pretending to be a good guy, and trying to like literally. You saw in that cinematic for the expansion, he's like pretending to rip her arms off just to terrify her.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of fuel there to like darken Diablo and make it that terrifying experience that we all remember from Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. It's there for them. They just have to continue to develop that storyline and make it a part of the world in the way that they have it so far.
And something that's kind of really juicy to think about from anybody listening to the podcast is that the people working on the Vessel of Hatred expansion have been working on this for over a year. We've been playing Diablo 4, the team, through all the rigmarole and the ups and downs and the layoffs at Blizzard and the whole industry and whatever else they went through. They were still chipping away at this final product, right? So they know where they want the story to go. We don't know that. They didn't disclose that to us. They didn't say it at all. We just got a chance to get a snapshot view of the Spiritborn, but they know what they're doing. They're taking us on an adventure and a journey, and so we'll see where it goes, right? We have no idea. Yeah.
And Diablo is a very, like, the team has done a good job up to this point telling a story. So I have a lot of faith in them for that.
Even if
sure.
it's not the story I want, like I don't have the Templar or the Paladin replaced class coming out. I don't have any of that. I will wait because I want to see where it goes. I don't want to live in a world where what happened with Diablo. Like I got to know. I need to know that. So I'm along for the ride for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. For you, in Diablo 3, what was your favorite class that you played?
I did like the monk a lot, and I was a big fan of the witch doctor. I know that those weren't necessarily at different times they were meta. So it was a very social experience for me. Diablo 3 was, and so I just found builds that I thought were fun. Right, like I could load into Diablo after grad school, and I could sit there and play with my buddy. Who's across the country. I could just sit there and like enjoy and have a conversation with them. And Monk I like that that very martial arts play style. And then with the Witch Doctor, it was just silly. Like I could throw chickens out, and it was like, what am I even doing here? But it worked and it was fun. And I think that those were my favorite two classes. What about? I know that you said Paladin was in 2. What about 3?
So three for me was a real big issue. So in Diablo 3, I aligned most with Crusader. Big surprise. A Barbarian as well. And then the game was not for me. The second that we had Whimsyshire and it was already kind of cartoony, because it was like, I used to call it World of Diablo Craft, because it felt like World of Warcraft's spirit in my Diablo game, because that's where we're at in the gaming industry, right? And so for me, it's Crusader, for the long-winded answer here. But I never really loved Diablo 3. I pushed competitively in the Crusader leaderboards. I pushed as a barb. Early on, the Inferno difficulty was disgusting. You get one shot by poison stinger guys, even if you played tight. Like, it was really, really punishing. And so I was okay. I don't mind a challenge. Like I play Elden Ring. I must be insane. But it's like, I like that stuff. And I don't know why. I'm a glutton for punishment, I suppose. But I did that a lot. And then Diablo 3 sucked for me. And I got out of it. And I said, like, I guess that's Diablo now, right? And then Diablo 2 Resurrected hit by a guy named Brent Gibson, who worked at Vicarious Visions and redid that whole adventure. Meeting him was great. But thank Christ for Brent for getting back in there with that company and redoing Diablo 2 to bring it back up to a modern feel. But yeah, for me, it was Crusader.
I actually agree with you a lot. I've mentioned this a couple times on my stream. Like it felt almost too cheery. Even like it was the idea of like visiting heaven, and like it just
it's like you took this demonic gothic experience in an ARPG and you made it cartoons. It's like What they did was they took the game of itemization that was exceptionally fantastic in Diablo 2 and they converted it to an action game, an arcade variant. In Diablo 4, for some people out there, the reason they don't like it is it feels too arcadey. It's not like the looting game they want from Diablo 2, and that could be a couple things. It could be like nostalgia, or it could just be that Diablo 4's itemization is kind of shallow compared to Path of Exile or Diablo 2 as an example, or Last Epoch, or whatever one you enjoy, right? So they're warranted conversations for sure, but I think
100%.
I think Diablo 2 Resurrected is king. I mean, you can even say Project Diablo 2 is very good. Diablo 2 is it for me, and anything that's a deviation of that, I'm willing to try. I'm not going to dismiss it, but it's tough. It's tough because it's so damn good. Finding that item is so good, you know?
It's good, and it was so inventive, right? Like, I don't think there's ever going to be an ARPG quite like it because it did so many things that no one else had done. You know, and
there has to be though, right? There has to be. It's video games.
Someday we'll see, right?
Yeah,
but like, it was one of those games that like everybody that loves that genre, they love it because of Diablo 2.
Yeah, like nothing. I don't know. Like, fuck, man, we could talk about this for hours, but you're totally right. For its time, it was so exceptional, and I'm glad someone's like, oh yeah, there's a character in this game called Diablo 2 that you can summon a skeleton to fight for you. I thought, like, what a cool idea. I want to try that, and that's something I fell in love with. I was like, damn, you could do that, and you could do that. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, what else I got for you? So, outside of Diablo, what action role-playing games do you get down with, or what other games? Let's broaden it up. When you're not playing Diablo, do you enjoy the most?
So this has evolved for me. I started as a content creator playing shooters, and have sort of faded from that a little bit because I recognized that there for all of the issues that happen in the ARPG world, you don't run into cheaters as much as you do in like shooters, for example.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so like for example, cheaters in Warzone kind of just ruins the experience for me. And I got to this point where I was like, why am I even, all I have to do is load it into one game and I'm, somebody's driving a bus through a building. And it became a problem for me to be able to even enjoy it. And so I shifted. Diablo really took over the stream, and it has sort of become the main channel home base. But I do play a lot of like roguelites. Okay. I play games that are very difficult. I did just beat Elden Ring for the second time. I play
DLC no?
What's that?
Did you beat the DLC?
Not yet. I'm about halfway through the DLC. It's very, very tough.
I almost one-shot the last boss. I got super lucky. They're
God,
like, well, guys, like, dude, if you hit this, that's insane. I'm like, well, I'm just calling out like Street Fighter attacks.
I will fully admit that I am not good at Souls-likes. I enjoy Elden Ring very, very much, but I'm never going to be that guy that one-shots one of the bosses or anything. I enjoy the atmosphere and the first time you load into Elden Ring, that scene of like the whole world, it's a masterpiece. Just no other way to put it. It's just a masterpiece.
Epic, yeah.
Yeah, I have played PoE in the past. Admittedly, I find myself a little bit overwhelmed by a lot of the systems in PoE.
I get this all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
So I don't know what the remedy for that is other than to play it more and to just give myself more experience.
Let me erode and maybe offer a remedy to anybody listening to the podcast. If you like ARPGs, Path of Exile is a dense POS for you. It is a pile for you. It's so much to learn for you. But here's the remedy, right? You already know most of it. That's the truth. The skill tree is Paragon boards from Diablo 4. If you know how to connect a dot and follow a guide, which is what most people do in their ARPG now, Path of Exile has the exact same thing. Now, the skill tree and the way you use skills is different, but that's a good thing. And here's why you'd want to try Path of Exile. In any ARPG that you play where you're like, man, there's not enough endgame. If you feel like there's not enough endgame, Path of Exile will give you so much endgame, you'll drown in it. It's got so many different kinds. You got like, you should see, like, if you've ever played Settlers of Catan, the next Path of Exile season coming out is Settlers of Kalgur, and it's like Farmville inside of a game like this. And where the complexity comes in is so sexy stuff of crafting your gear. Like the best gear you're going to make in the game, you make yourself. And then the end game, the real end game, and where like the big money making thing comes in. I don't mean by real money. I mean like in-game currency to afford other items. Where that comes in is your knowledge of the game to make those cool items. And then being a part of a community that supports you asking questions to unveil that process is where that magic is. And that's what
Yeah.
we do. That's what many other communities do, is we help each other out, because guys, I don't know everything about Path of Exile, but I'm down to ask the question because I'm okay being a noob. I got to be a noob like everybody else. Everybody starts somewhere, then we learn more. So yeah, Path of Exile is
I
so
will
sick.
say, when I have played Path of Exile, it's one of the most like welcoming communities I've ever been a part of. Like, I would load into it during one of the new leagues, and it's often tends to run in between seasons for Diablo. So it's one of those like I could go load into PoE and try to like experience it a little bit. And people are just incredibly helpful. You run into the occasional toxicity here and there, but that's just the internet, you know.
Just as a quick content creator like aside, if for every content creator gets this, you're going to unfortunately meet somebody that's a little bit toxic or unwelcoming, unpleasant. For every one of those people out there, there's 1,000 more that are positive.
No question about it.
If somebody meets me and they say, "Hey man, like why do you have so much energy? What's going on?" It's like, dude, like you must be on something XP. See you later. Like I'm a good like we're having a good time. You're welcome to be a part of it, and that's a terrible way to meet somebody. So set them straight and move on with your content.
Yeah, there's no place in, and this is such an interesting conversation about like gatekeeping. There's no room for that in gaming, in my opinion. Like, just enjoy the game the way you want to. You're not going to see me make fun of your build. I don't want you to make fun of mine, right? Like, at the end of the day, if I'm 3-shotting Uber Lilith and you 1-shotter, I'm happy for you. That's great.
That's my take too. Like, I want you to have fun. This is your leisure time. This is what you love to do. Let's enjoy that time for sure.
Yep, no question. I have also played. They just updated it, and you mentioned it earlier. Last Epoch.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I think Lost Epoch has a very, very good place in the ARPG world. I sort of think of it like, and I mentioned this a couple times on my stream, where it's like on one end of the spectrum, you've got like Torchlight, which is just a very like cartoony, very accessible, fun ARPG. On the other end, you have like PoE, which is, it's going to take you some time. There's a lot of meat to it, and it's just going to be hard.
Yeah.
To get into even. And then somewhere in there is like Diablo, somewhere in the middle. And then even between PoE and Diablo is Last Epoch, where it's like they've got some systems that are complex, and they've got some fun new things that they're doing. And I think that is so good and healthy for the ARPG genre as a whole.
Oh, the more ARPGs, the better, because we can look at that, we can learn from that, we can apply that in a game that we like or whatever. And you hope a game that, like, as an example, subscribes to the concept that there should be a solo self-found mode, and there should be a way that I can either be in a trade guild or not, and I could have, I could have ways to break down loot, and I could have I could buy stash tabs if I want to from Path of Exile. Like, all these ideas come together in this soup of ARPG that hopefully somebody connects the dots and makes the best experience. Who that is yet, we don't know. Time will tell.
Well, and Last Epoch does something that I'm like, when I played it for the very first time, I was scratching my head. I was like, why doesn't anybody else do this? And that is the ability to break down your gear out in the world. And it's like, it's such a simple thing, and then they did it. Simple.
And it's done. Yeah. Crazy. So here's one. So kind of we almost kind of got in that realm, and then we kind of skated away, which is fine.
Yeah.
But my question is, so like, do you think video games become worse in general when they become an esport? Here's an example. If Diablo 4, okay, go ahead. Okay, I'll have to expand.
No,
go ahead.
Finish. You're welcome to finish up.
Okay, if Diablo 4 pays out $5,000 to the world first 100, okay, and then the next season they have world first competitions, first Nightmare Dungeon 100 clear solo, first Pit 100 clear solo. Does the game become worse when everything becomes min-maxy? It takes away from the fantastic. Like, I want to log in and fantasy be a sorceress because there's no money behind it. I could just be my character. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a question I have not thought much about, but my instinct is to say yes, that would make the game worse, because what ends up happening is that also opens the door for cheating. And anytime you're starting to involve money, you're going to have people who are cutting corners in some way. You're going to have people who are finding the path of least resistance, whether it's cheating or not. They're going to exploit something within the game. Like, they find a dungeon somewhere that gives you, you can get 30,000 XP per minute versus, I'm going over here and I can get 20,000. And it becomes this thing like you're not playing a game, you're finding the exploit. And that, to me, isn't necessarily a healthy thing for a game like Diablo. So in Diablo, I would say that I would prefer that they didn't head that direction. I would like to see them strike a balance between catering to people who are like you and I, who have a lot of time and energy to devote to this game, and who min max and find the path of like, this is the best DPS you can possibly find for this build, and the person that is able to play 2 hours a week, right? There's a balance there, but I think the health of the game is best when they're able to cater to both of those groups, to somebody who's able to do it.
Hard to do because
Yeah, it's hard to do, but I think that's the strive, right?
Well,
Like,
an
that's the
example
goal.
of where that would be applicable would be the Codex of Power change. In a previous iteration, me and you would keep perfectly rolled aspects. We no longer have to. And somebody who was like only playing a little bit had they had what they had, right? And now the Codex of Power awards any of that player pool to say, you've got perfect, you've got average, you got nut low. Grats. And so
Yep.
I think that Diablo 4 is obviously catering to the more casual crowd, which is doesn't feel bad in my opinion. But then even though that's true, I still want to push, a barbarian as far as I can take it, because Barb Nation rises up every time. So like, you know what I mean? I just have to do it. So that's how I am. Yeah. Interesting to hear your thoughts on the esport. Yeah.
I did. That raises the question about the specifics of the barb hammer that just happened.
The barb nerf bat. Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this? This upcoming barb nerf.
So Magic the Gathering, it happens every time. A new set comes out and everybody says this card's overpowered. This is overpowered. This is no one's ever going to use this. And that's like the flow of the conversation with Magic the Gathering. And in my experience, since Magic, games do it too. So what do I think? I think that everybody needs to relax, and here's why.
I agree.
We learned a little bit about what's happening to the Barbarian with the nerfs. There's no doubt about it. They're getting their knees cut off. Okay. But what we don't know in the patch notes for Season 5 is a couple things. We don't know all the legendary aspect changes, if there are any. We don't know what the seasonal theme is and how that might impact the class's ability to do more damage. Finally, we don't know the full laundry list of what uniques were changed and how. And I wouldn't be surprised to find out that some of these updated uniques that are skill-defining experiences like Gores potentially could make the Barb even stronger than it is. I think even with the revisions coming, Barbs are still going to do 1 billion damage as a bash build. A Hoda bash build will do 1 billion damage, which is beyond significant. You will still be able to full clear the game's content without an issue. And if you want to push the pit, I would imagine Barb's still landing somewhere north of 140 plus. And that's my comment today, without knowing what the patch notes are going to be. That's where I think they're going to be. So a little bit of too much, like the world's on fire, not so much. It's a bit of a wide arcing sweep. The way that they're doing changes, I don't fully agree with, but they're the developer. It's up to them to make that choice.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately the reality is that if they had left Barb where they were, my opinion, and you may not agree with this, is that they were going to end up in a situation where they were already ahead of everybody, and they were going to continue to grow into that. And I know that as a Barb, main, that would probably be to a certain degree okay. But I think everybody else needs to come up too.
You said Barb's ahead of everybody else. The Sorceress is the #1 highest clearing pit class in the game.
Yeah.
It clears highest because of the flame shield, infinite duration. It can't be killed.
And I'm glad that they broke that too. Yeah.
Oh, me too. But Barb wasn't beating that. Barb didn't do that because Barb couldn't. And so it's interesting that everybody says Barb was #1, but Barb is disgusting. Nobody doubts that. Barb wins because of the math on every item that it gets, but it holds more items, it gets more powers, has more legendary aspects. But Sork was clearing the best, so I don't necessarily think that Barb was the best. It's solid, it's real good, it's insane. But if we're talking numbers, Sork was the best. So
that's true. And Barbs are probably, if it's not Hoda or if it's not Bash, it's going to be Deathblow. So there's going to be, I think personally, I think Deathblow is going to be the next one. With that new unique that turns it into a core scale with no cooldown. I think that has a potential to sort of take over. So I think Barbs are overreacting a little bit, and that there will be something that will be broken for Barbs.
I hope so too. There's just too many items. I shouldn't say that. There's not enough items, but there are several available options that are getting refactored, and we don't know what that means. So the floor to where the ceiling is for the gains, we'll see in time. Right now, we don't know. And I'm hopeful, Copium, I'm hopeful that it'll be fun. And even if it isn't, you could just go play Rogue, and that's insane. So don't worry about that. Or Druid. Druid looks good. Sork looks good. Rogue's looking good. Everything's looking good. I'm not a big Necro guy, but I hear they're doing well too. So
that's actually my main class. So I hope they do well too.
Which one's your main?
Necromancer.
Oh, you mean Necro? Okay, so we couldn't have a conversation because I don't know shit about the Necro. I don't. I played like every class in depth except for Necro. There's just something about that isn't the Diablo 2 Necro that it just turns me off.
And a lot of people don't. They just can't vibe with it for some reason. Even with like sacrifice builds, the complexity of their builds just gets all of the creative energy
cogs going.
Right? So,
It's just not for me. Yeah, those are the primary questions I had for you about the esports stuff, all that jazz. That's it. That's what I got.
Yeah. Well, I also didn't have much more for you. It's been really cool chatting with you. And,
you too.
I would love to have you on again. And
sure.
I look forward to this expansion. I look forward to the future of Diablo and stuff. So.
Well, I want to say thanks to you and your community for having me. And if you guys enjoyed the podcast, let us know. And thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, and I will link to Barricade's Twitch and YouTube channel down below so that everybody can go follow you and check your content out. Okay.
Thank you, man. Much love.
All right. Yeah.
GGs.
Have a good one.
See you. Woohoo.
Okay, so that was really cool, man.